Hello, welcome back to All for United. Well. We're 2 days away from another game. We've just played 2 days ago. Games coming thick and fast, but as we were just chatting a little bit backstage, we do have an international break coming up, so we will have some, from an All for United point of view, we'll have some different types of shows, obviously over the international break with no United games, but we'll obviously talk a little bit about Southampton to start with. Obviously, we're going to talk about the midfield with Casemiro being out, a couple of other players being out. Garnacho is now injured as well. We've got so much to talk about in relation to that. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about, obviously, Real Betis coming up on Thursday as well. But we'll come to each of you then. Your last word, I guess, on the Southampton game. So we didn't do a match review for that. Stu, 0-0. Obviously, the red card, we're going to talk about, but as I think you said in one of our group chats, obviously the red card did affect the game, but we ultimately didn't score either. So that was a bit of a problem as well.
Yeah, no. The thing is, fans love to get on the backs of the referees. They do it all the time. Oh, the ref was this, the ref was that, and he shouldn't ref us again, blah, 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 blah. But, referees don't cost you football matches. Like a goals cost you football matches. And if you're not clinical enough, which we weren't, then you're not going to win. It's as simple as that, really. With regards to red card, again, Jesus, it was a stonewall red at the end. There's absolutely nothing to say about it. Yeah, you've got to look at it. I've watched it back 6 or 7 times now, and you've got to look at the path of least resistance for Casemiro. Okay, is to go straight past. I can't remember who the player was. When you actually look at their contact, it wasn't a straight head on 50-50. Casemiro's foot actually had to bend right to catch his shin. Now, you could argue that the ball, the top of the ball, twisted him and he twisted his body, etc. But he went up with an open foot. He didn't go in with a closed foot. And what I mean by that is he went in with his foot like that rather than like that. So if he'd gone in with a closed foot, he would have won the ball and his foot wouldn't have bounced off the ball and gone into the shin if that's what happened. What he did do was he went in with an open foot, so the back of his heels caught the top of the ball and he kind of twisted his body and that's why his foot went into the guy's shin. So as soon as you do that, the referees are looking at it saying he's out of control, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't out of control. He just got it wrong. He got his foot position wrong on the ball. As I said, if he'd gone in with a closed foot, he would have won the ball. He would have had more of his heel on the ball and he would have pushed it away from wherever it was and he would have followed through that way. So it was a straight sending off. And, unfortunately, Anthony Taylor got a lot wrong, but he got a lot right. Take that aside, we didn't play with any real buzz. We didn't play with any real control in the game. Our short game again was woeful. It really was. Our long game wasn't great. We've got too many players at the minute that are quite anonymous in games. And Ten Hag made his first mistake for me really this season, and that was instead of removing Bruno out of the equation, he took Weghorst off, and you took somebody off that creates space for the wingers, it creates space for Anthony, creates space for Rashford, could create space for Sancho, because he harasses and he pushes and he pulls. And Bruno, great player, absolutely phenomenal player, but he's that risky type of player, isn't he? He will take the risk. He will try the 40-yard Hollywood ball. He will try and run around and try and get involved in the play, but he comes too deep occasionally. So he made a couple of errors for me, Ten Hag. There's a real trust element I think he's got with some of the squad, which he's got to put aside now because he's got to start utilising the squad properly, which we've not been doing that. The squad have been playing way too many games. They're not physically tired, they're mentally tired. And this goes back to the Casemiro challenge, the sending off. He was mentally tired. He knows what he wants to do, but he can't actually get there and do it. He's not been playing that well, Casemiro, for the past 6 matches. He's having problems with his... and I'll tell you why it is, and I'll tell you exactly why it is. It's missing Eriksen. With Eriksen out of the team, Casemiro, the onus is on him to keep everything tight. With Eriksen in the team, he's got a proper foil. Fred isn't the right foil for him. He bounces off Eriksen a lot more than he does Fred. It's a much more better collaboration, a much better partnership. And that allows Bruno to have that more free role when Eriksen's on the pitch and when Casemiro's on the pitch. So we're missing all of this at the minute. And that's just football, though. It happens. You can go to any changing room up and down the country, and you've got players who are off form, players who are mentally tired, not physically tired, but mentally tired, and players that are picking up injuries. And we were always going to pick up injuries. And Connor, my friend, you will know, because we had this chat 4 weeks ago when we opened up on AFU, and I said to you at the time, he needs to start utilising the whole squad. And that includes playing Maguire more, that includes playing Lindelof more, playing Malacia more, playing Aaron Wan-Bissaka more, which he has been doing and he wasn't doing, because we are going to get to the stage of the season where we're going to pick up injuries, suspensions, and players are out of form. And that's exactly where we are. It's exactly where we are. It's this natural evolution of a squad that isn't being utilised to really the benefits that it should be. I'm not being critical of Ten Hag. I'm not, because he's done phenomenally well, but it's biting us at the minute, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's a fair assessment to make. I mean, Dan, for yourself, I mean, kind of get your final thoughts on the Southampton game in particular. Do you think we just maybe looked a little bit tired in the game? How do you kind of assess it? Because, I mean, that's the easy analysis to make, is that we look tired because obviously the amount of games we've played. But where do you kind of see what went wrong in that particular game?
I agree with Stu for 99.9% of what he said, to be fair. It's just, I mentioned it a few weeks back I think it was on the channel actually, in terms of lack of trust in the rotation. Maybe bringing in players that he could give a chance to, like Maguire, like Malacia. I was a massive fan of Dalot in terms of he started the season really well. But Wan-Bissaka's overtaken him for form, and he's not seemed to rotate them. So before, he's been rotating people based on form, but Wan-Bissaka's been in much better form, but it's been starting on the bench and then coming on. And then he's finally looks like he started to swap. Well, no, I definitely think he could have rotated the squad a lot more than he has. It's just the sheer volume of games. You obviously getting beat 7-0 at the weekend before, then the Betis game to recover. It's all the same players that have played. They're all mentally fatigued. They're absolutely shattered. And then I don't disagree with the Casemiro red card in the sense that you can fully see why it's a red card. My only raised eyebrow came because Anthony Taylor saw it, very clearly saw it. And is it a clear and obvious error if he's give the yellow? Now, I would say, with what we've seen over the weekend, you cannot say that's a clear and obvious error, because there's been far worse tackles that have not been looked at all. So my only gripe was, when he pulled out the yellow, I thought, right, you saw that, it's yellow. And then I genuinely think he's just too high on the ball, so it deflects up and hits. It could go the other way. Like physics could take it the other way. It just so happens to take it.
It was an inch too high.
Yeah.
If you remember back in the day, before all this crazy stud patterns, and you had 4 at the back and 4 up front, and I'm talking back in the 80s here. I really am. If he got all his 4 back studs on that ball, no problem. Absolutely no problem. There's no way his foot would have turned. Absolutely no chance in a million years would his foot have turned. And that's why I talk about an open face tackle and a closed face tackle, because he just needed to, like that really, do that. And he gets
the only thing for me was it's a weird thing to say, but if you take away the ball, I don't think he's going to catch Alcaraz at all. I think he's going to miss him completely.
No, he's not.
Yeah. It's the fact that he's hit the top of the ball and then hit his leg. And I mean, once that happens, I think the players did really well in terms of finishing the game. But mentally, they must have been absolutely dead on the feet. They've had a big week in terms of recovery, and then now they've lost what the media portrays the savior of the season in terms of, and mentally they must be like, what are we watching? Like, what are we going to do now? And to be honest, in all the decisions and everything, the save from Bazaniga, is it? From Fernandez's shot, I genuinely couldn't believe he saved it. When the ball left Fernandez's foot, I thought it was a goal. I was mid-celebration, and then this hand came out of absolutely nowhere and tips it away. And I just couldn't believe it. But I think to get the point after the week they've had, obviously it's not good enough because we needed the 3 points, but you would take it. We've just now got to sort of press forward. I just hope he starts to make some of these changes. Like, for me, it's an absolute no-brainer going into the next game that Maguire comes in, Malacia comes in, and they start to rotate a bit. It's just like the headline says, the midfield. I just genuinely have a bit of a loss of what we're going to do in terms of just personnel available.
Well, that is definitely something we're going to cover in the next kind of 40 minutes or so as we talk about the midfield. Obviously, get your thoughts in the people that are watching. Us coming here talking about, the team's already knackered in that double shift for 10 men due to the sending off as double whammy. Obviously, that's not going to have helped fitness-wise. We're going to cover this, I'm sure, over the international break when we actually look at the league table. A point was probably good for the type of game that it was, especially after the last Premier League game that we had. However, I'm looking at that league table now and a little bit concerned that we could drop out of it if we're not careful. I think we've still got the squad there, but if we get one or two more, especially to Rashford, if we get another injury or a suspension somewhere else, I think we're in a little bit of trouble. And I'd hate to see this good season that we've had kind of fall away because of a couple of things like that. But we don't know. As Stu said, it's football. We don't know what's around the corner. We'll talk about the midfield. We're going to get into, obviously, Garnacho's injury and obviously Real Betis a little bit in just a second. I guess my kind of starting question, focus on Casemiro just a little bit. Obviously, this isn't the first suspension he's had with us this season. He's obviously had a couple. But the interesting thing that's obviously flying around social media at the moment, not a single red card for Real Madrid. And in the space of however many months at United, he's already managed to rack up a couple. So what do we put that down to? Because I don't think there's anything going on. I think there's cases for both being as they are. And the suspensions I don't disagree with, to be honest. I think they're probably about right. But do we think he's doing anything different to what he's doing here than over at Madrid? Because the fact he played pretty much a decade in Madrid, not a single red, and to come to United and have the kind of suspension history that he's got already, it's a little bit strange for me because obviously it's something he's not known for. But just getting your guys' kind of thoughts on that one.
Yeah, look, when you're playing at Real Madrid, you've got the Kruna and Modric just ahead of you. That's all you kind of need. You win the ball, you knock it off, and that's it. You leave it. When you're playing in the Premier League, first and foremost, it's a much more faster game. It's a much more press high game, so to speak. And Casemiro is starting to kind of find that, but he's not got the kind of talent around him since Eriksen. And this is what I was saying about Eriksen's a massive miss for Casemiro. He doesn't have that real talent around him at the minute where he can lock it off to a Modric. He can take it with two players around him. Wiggle his way out, pop it off to the Kruna, and the Kruna will knock off a beautiful 15-yard pass, and he pushes you up the pitch immediately. We haven't got that without Eriksen in and around us. And when you look behind him again, yes, we've got Varane, which he's familiar with, and yes, we've got Liche. He hasn't got Ramos and he hasn't got Pepe over his shoulder, tapping him. It's okay. Let him come. Ramos, I'll just take him out. Don't worry about it, pal. You just stand around there. We don't have that. And he's had 10 years of quality behind him and absolute quality in front of him to be able to do what he wants to do. And Casemiro is one of these players that makes central midfield play look easy. And it can be if you allow it to be easy. The way that he marshals is 10 to 15 yards. That's all it ever is. Whenever he moves, it's 10 or 15 yards when we're out of possession because he's waiting and making sure that he's in the right position for turnover. Okay. But again, when he's got Eriksen with him, he can win the ball, flip it to Eriksen, and Eriksen can get us moving. So herein lies our dilemma moving forward now because whether we like it or not, Ten Hag has got one massive issue now with our midfield because it's as woeful as it's going to be right now. And I'm afraid Bruno's got to step up now. If he wants to be captain of this team, and you know me, Connor, I don't pay attention to skippers. I'm not interested in them. But if he wants to lead this team, he's got to come down and play as an 8. Forget playing as a winger. Forget playing as a 10. He's got to play as a bona fide 8. And for me, it's a very, very simple transition. You rock in Martinez at 6. He's played there before. He knows how to play. You put Bruno as an 8. And then I don't know what to do, because you've either got to put in potentially McTominay or you've got to put in Fred. Now, those 3 don't work. Bruno, Martinez and Fred don't work. Bruno, Martinez and McTominay don't work. As good as McTominay was when he came on, he put a shift in. I thought he was pretty good when he came on against Southampton. To push him alongside somebody like Martinez, I don't think it's going to work. Now, obviously, Kobe Mino has been brought into it. I think he's a bit too young. I think he's a bit too early for him. It's just my humble opinion. I think he's a great talent. I really do. He's done a couple of things when he's been into games that if I was in the change room after the game, I'd rip his head off for, and I'd explain to him that you're playing Premier League football. You're not playing under 23s and under 18s. But, these kids do that. But you've got to make sure that they're grounded. And I do like him. It's the same with Iqbal. Could you bring in Zidane Iqbal? Unless he's on loan. I can't remember if he's gone off on loan or not. But what I would do, and here's the controversy, Connor, and this is what you're either going to like or you're not going to like. For me, moving forward, it would be Martinez a 6, which means you bring in either Varane or you bring in Lindelof to part, or you bring in Shaw and then play Malacia at left back. Maybe that's the option. But Martinez a 6, Bruno is an 8, and then my man, Ben's man, Palestri is a 10. Now, the reason I'm saying, people will say Palestri is an out-and-out winger. I tend to agree. I think he is. I think he's brilliant. But he's got that, and correct me if I'm wrong, lads. I mean, tell me if you think I'm talking bollocks, but I think he's got that low centre of gravity. The way that he controls the football with his left peg, very... and don't laugh at me here, but just think about his posture, very Messi-esque with his posture. I'm talking about his posture. I'm not talking about his play. I'm just talking about his posture. And
low
his
centre of gravity, isn't it?
Yeah, and his ball control. I'm talking about his posture and his ball control, right? He never loses it. It never goes any more than 3 to 4 inches away from his toe, which is where the ball should be. He's very, very tight. He can pick a pass. He's got speed, and he can shoot. So I just think that Martinez, Bruno is a bona fide 8, though. Bruno has to play the 8, and Palestri as a 10. And then you've got your Weghorst, your Anthony, and your Rashford. I think that would be a solid middle 3 for us to mount some kind of attack. Other than that, you've got to play McFred. So there you go. What do you want? Do you want a bit of creativity, or do you want to go back to normal? So it's just my thoughts. Just my thoughts on it.
I mean, Dan Shu's pretty much kickstarted the kind of discussion around this. They're giving us his kind of 3. We may as well go on to that, to be fair, in terms of what I can't even remember what my... Oh, no, in fact, answer this first, Dan, please. My original question about Casemiro in terms of at Real Madrid. Obviously, no red cards, and we'll see at the moment. Have you seen anything in his game that's different, or do you just think it's just how it's been this season?
I think his game's the same. It's the structure around him that's different. So I think the key one's the transitions. When you play for Real Madrid for a decade, you've not faced as many transitions in a decade than you have at United this season. I think he's getting caught, and we've seen it a few times where you could argue that he's made the wrong decision to do a foul because he's so not used to being on his own like that. And I genuinely think it doesn't help that we've got the deepest defensive line in the league, or second deepest still. So
yeah, we have. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it's the space on the turn is massive, and I think sometimes he just thinks I've got to shut this space down as quick as I can. And the weird one is the sending off the first time, which again it's debatable depending which replay you look at. Was just a bit of a poor decision. And then the one at Southampton, again, I wouldn't say he was overran at the point he made the tackle or did the tackle. He probably could have left it or just gone for a push, or he didn't have to go for the slide. So I think he's got to sort of adapt. But the faster we can get ball players around him, that like Fernandez, if you stick him in the 6 or in the 8, that don't wander and stick to position, it'll help him loads. But yeah, I don't think his game's overly changed. I just genuinely think he's sort of the starting piece of what's going forward. You got to remember that Ten Hag still only got, is it 3 of his signings? He's built off sort of what Ole's done the other season, and he sort of fed back into it because it's got the results that got us second and third. So he knows that it works, and obviously feeding into the next few games. This is why I genuinely think we might see McFred, and it's because it worked for Solskjaer in a way that we finished in the Champions League spaces. And if he can accommodate it, my issue with Ten Hag is he really won't want to see Martinez out the left centre back. He wants him there because of the ball progression. So I can't see him overly changing too much. With like Betis coming up and stuff like that, it's the international break. Like I would give Kobe Mino a chance in maybe the Betis game at some point, but with the international break coming up, there's probably no point. You've got enough starting midfielders to patch it up for the 2 games before we get the 17 days off. But no, I off the top of my head, I wouldn't know what he's going to go with because he has like sprung some surprises this season in terms of selection, but I don't think he will. I think he's got a core group of players that he trusts, and I don't think he'll come away from that group of players unless he's really, really forced to. It'd be interesting to see Pellistri play in the 10 or the 8, or maybe off the wing. It looks like he's priming Sancho to do that because I don't think he wants to drop Anthony because of his defensive cover or what he brings to the team.
I don't think Pellistri could do an 8.
It's a bit too deep, I think. Yeah,
But
he's definitely intelligent enough to do the 10. He's definitely got that touch and turn that you need. I was impressed with just how close the ball is to his feet constantly. It's never out of his control. Whereas you see some players are constantly on the stretch when they're sprinting to keep the ball under control. His is always just like glue.
You know, when you're kids, you know where your foot is, say that's the tip of your foot. We were always taught there's a very shallow semicircle, and you keep the ball within that semicircle around your foot. So you try and keep it as close to your big toe. Sounds weird, I know, as possible. But that's what he does brilliantly well. Absolutely.
He does, yeah.
If you think about the Weghorst goal, he takes on three players, and you're thinking, is he going to get around 3 players? But if you watched him, he just leans slightly in because he's left-footed. He leans slightly in, which makes the defender's job really, really difficult. Because to knock him off the ball, you've got to really push him. But because he's leaned in, it makes it really hard for you to like kind of knock him off his balance. And it gave him that extra yard to get his cross in. I know it was a little bit unfortunate, but
with stuff like that, and again, we're not going to compare him to Messi in terms of
no, absolutely.
Messi does exactly the same thing. When they get the nudge, it seems to speed them up. And it's not knocking them off balance, it's knocking them into a sprint or into the position they want to go. And it always keeps them on the right side of the player as well. And I've definitely noticed the same thing. He looks so promising. Obviously, the downside of Garnacho being injured, well, the upside of that will hopefully be Pellistri can get more minutes in the team. We're going to need somebody to step up. I still think that's a major issue for us in terms of no matter what we do in midfield, the goals only seem to be coming from one place. Is it Anthony and Fernandez on 7 and then Rashford on like 26?
Correct.
I would imagine if we were talking to Ronaldo on 26 and everyone else on 7, we'd be saying he's taking all the goals and it's okay, and it's not. We need more output. I think Martial's back in training, but I don't think he's going to get. I don't think he'll be risked for Betis. Maybe back for Fulham, but.
Yeah. Sorry, Connor. I was just about to say, I think Fulham's a move on that one. Look, I think you're right. I think you'll go with McFred. I do. I wholeheartedly agree with you. But I think sometimes Connor will grin at this because I always say sometimes you've got to go rogue. And what I mean by go rogue is change it up, completely change it up. You know, completely fox the opposition manager. And sometimes you have to do that. And I'm not saying Martinez, Bruno, and Pellistri is the magic 3. I just think it gives us the best balance and the best quality, and I think that's the key to it: balance and quality. And I think that offers us that because You're absolutely right about Sancho. I think he is priming Sancho for a 10, but he's not doing. He's not doing enough for me. Sancho, Anthony drifts in and out of games. I agree, but him and Wan-Bissaka right now have got something special.
Yeah, they've got a good connection there. Yeah,
something special. Malacia and Rashford. We know Rashford's quite lazy now coming back, and I think that's been Luke Shaw's issue the last few weeks. But you could trust Luke Shaw in at left centre back. We've seen him do it before, and that's why I think we could. And I don't think it's too much of a gamble, but we could gamble with Martinez as a 6 for a couple of games till we maybe get Eriksen back. But Bruno, the key to it all, by the way, would be Bruno's discipline. That would be the key to that working or not. I know it's radical. Don't get me wrong, I do. But sometimes you got to do it, and if you get beat, you get beat. So Phil Jones.
To be fair, that might be the closest possibility that we're ever going to see that.
I would love that just for Karthik. Karma, you'd have to have Karthik on.
100%. We'd be naming the show that and everything if that ever happened. We'd be going straight away if that comes up. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what you said. I think it's a difficult one for me because I think Eriksen would be ideal right now. As has been said in that midfield, obviously he's out as well. We're going to talk a little bit about Garnacho in a second. But, when you're looking at that midfield now, there's a question for you, Stu, that I was actually going to bring up. Because you said, if we're past McFred, then should we have got rid of them? My little quick thoughts on that. Imagine if we had have got rid of them, we'd have next to nobody right now in that midfield. I mean, who is fit? Sabitza's also out. Or rumoured to be having a little bit of a niggle as well. So there's 3. Eriksen's out, Casemiro suspended. Who else? I'm trying to think who we've even got in a midfield capacity then.
So here comes the major uproar, the real controversy. If we push through with Rabiot, and I know people weren't interested in him, blah, 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 but if we pushed him with Rabiot, we'd be all right today. If Rabiot was fit, we'd be fine because he'd fit in there perfectly. But anyway, we didn't. It's got to be Sabitzer for me, Asim. There's a trust element for Fred and there's a trust element for McTominay. Now, there is a counter argument, and we will get the counter argument. The counter argument is that the second half Fred, prolific second half Fred, he's on about 5 goals, is terrific. Absolutely, he is. But you've got to rely on a player right now to do that for 90 plus minutes. And we don't have that. I think Sabitzer, and I'll be interested to get your thoughts on it, guys. I think he's been pretty good since he's been playing, come into the team. I think he's been okay. I think once he settles, and I'd like to see him, we can get him on the cheap for 20 million in the summer. I'd love to see Sabitzer, stay with us. I think Sabitzer for me would be the primary 6 if he was fit. Then you could put Bruno in, and then you could still run Palestri or Sancho. But Bruno, either way, moving forward, Connor, Bruno has to play the 8. He's got to play the 8 for me. So I would get rid of McTominay in the summer team, and I'll keep Fred as a squad player.
Is Fred still out of contract in the summer?
I think he might be,
McSauce. Probably. I think he's got a year left, hasn't he? No, we extended Fred's, didn't we, for a year?
We extend Fred. Yeah, I was wondering whether we'd extended or not. I think, was it Fred and Dallo we've extended?
Yeah, we've extended.
Hey, we haven't yet.
Fred, yeah.
But just to jump in on this Sabitzer thing, I was just been reading he's been called up by Austria for the internationals. So I don't know whether that's a good sign on his injury or not, but it's saying that he was called up.
Yeah, so he'll probably be ready after
the break for the internationals. But
it's not mad then.
Well, I'll tell you what though, if I'm any Man United first team player, I'm saying I'm taking 7 days off, boss. Let me go away for 7 days. I want some sun. Let me go away for 7 days, and I'll come back because they are a waste of time. This international break.
Yeah, 100%. Just to make a point as well, I think Ten Hag really could get hold of some of the fringe players at this period of time and say to them, right, you might not have had your chances at the start of the season. Go and take it now.
Absolutely.
Like Maguire would be a prime example of that. I always like Fred when he's pressing from the front because he brings something different. We always seem to get a scrappy goal when he's pressing from the front. And I think there's room to have, I don't know what would be behind it, but Weghorst pressing with Fred would work if we've got Fernandes that can sit, if he can stay in the role. But I definitely think there's room for Ten Hag to get hold of some of these rotation players or players that maybe haven't had a big chance and say, go and take it by the balls. You've got a chance to play yourself into the first team when we're pushing for trophies because you've got to push through the tough periods. So I'm hoping we see a reaction from some players. Maguire's waited pretty much all season for a chance in the team. I think Varane personally is struggling at the minute. His statistics, like off the ball and passing, have not been great. There's not a lot of ball progression from him at the minute, and that would, I suppose, in the terms of a risky play, if you was to push Martinez forward, Maguire's really good at ball progression. So if you played him on the right, you might be able to sort of switch the attack a little bit to push Martinez forward. I still think he would bring, if he was going to do that, I genuinely think he would go whole hog and put Shaw at left centre back. He just loves a left-footed centre back. It's just what he wants.
He does. No, he does.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a centre half, and it does work to have double-footed people. I'm left or right-footed, so I can play left centre half or right centre half. But if you're predominantly right-footed, like Varane is, you do need that left-footed centre half. Absolutely, totally agree. And we were all surprised to see that Shaw did offer some kind of solidity, didn't he? Very, very stable.
Oh, he's brilliant for a period. Yeah.
Which is great for Ten Hag because we've got Malacia that can come in and sit him. He had a couple of issues at the beginning of the season. He had a great start, and then he really dropped off. He understood what the Premier League was about. Now we've got him, playing. You've got Wan-Bissaka on the right. You've got that kind of ability. And this is why I say, utilising Martinez at a 6 for a couple of games isn't that big a deal because he knows that he's played there before under Ten Hag for Ajax and he knows what to do. And but again, it all comes down to, I don't know why we keep going on about it, the skipper. One thing though, you're absolutely spot on about Maguire. Connor, tell you, I'm a huge Maguire fan. I think he's a great centre half. Players don't like him. But fans don't like him, and that's fine. I think he's a great centre half. He never had a Casemiro. He hasn't had a Casemiro type player to sit in front of him. And
it's such a shame as well that when he comes into the team, he's not going to have a Casemiro again.
There's no Casemiro. No, and this is the problem. So for the next 2 games, I'm with you. Either you play Maguire or Lindelof, or you go Maguire and Shaw, and then Lindelof and Shaw, something along those lines. But you've got to rest Varane. I think you're right about Varane. I think he's injured again. Dallow's definitely.
He looks tired. Varane, the last 2 games I've watched, he looks tired. Like I've always thought that he's got a bit of a weird run. He doesn't ever seem to open up his sprint at all. Even though he's going quickly, he never seems to open up his legs. I think he's worried about obviously hamstrings or injuries. But yeah. I think he needs a rest for sure. And Dallow's just not looked the same since the World Cup.
I think he's still injured though.
Yeah, and he's not. I don't think there's much difference. There's this wild theory on the internet that Wan-Bissaka's really good at defending and Dallow's not so good at defending, and they're both pretty much evenly matched. All it ever comes down to me is form. Whichever one's on form, they should be starting.
Just before I go back to the serious stuff about this debate, is that is a name, Brown Knight? I have not seen you for about a year.
Wow.
In the comments. That is somebody I remember you vividly. And
he always started with what did I miss?
What did I miss? I could not believe that when I just saw that comment come on screen. So welcome back. Like I said, it's been a very long time since I've seen you in the comments. So welcome back to All for United. Yeah, I mean, Jarvis, I don't quite know where, unless that's brand new, but the article I read about 4 hours ago, he is selected and he is likely to play for Austria. So if Radnick said that since, fair enough, I've not seen it. But as of this morning, he was ready to play.
The one I've just read was 2 hours ago, so unless it has changed like recently, it could have. You never know.
I thought he got a groin injury, but I mean, you know. Oh, we blocked him on Twitter. Apparently, that was Ben.
Oh well, Well, potentially, Brown Knight. If you've not seen the news, I am the new owner of All for United now, so so that's why potentially. So we have got a new Twitter account. If you're not already following that one, it's literally at All for United, so you'll be able to find it nice and easy. Yeah, I don't really know where I stand on all this because again, I'm not going to talk about if we had this player because you could make a case for Donny in that case. You know, if we had him, he'd be great right now in this.
Well,
in this kind of thing.
It'd be someone to play, wouldn't it? But we haven't got Donny either. So,
and I think this is the big problem that someone's going to be playing out of position. Because we don't have the midfielders to fill the roles that we, if you're playing a traditional 3 and a 6, 8 and a 10, we don't have those positions. Someone's going to be playing out of it. I'm with you, Dan. I don't like seeing Fred dropped further back, so I hope it's not him who's dropped further back. So for me, if Sabitza's back after the break, great. It would likely. I'd probably go with Sabitzer, Fred, and Bruno maybe potentially, but I don't know whether there's enough in that. I mean, Apex mentioned 2 ball carriers that you can't get off the ball would put this team. Without a Casemiro and an Eriksen, I worry a little bit that we don't have people in midfield that can keep hold of the ball. Now, Bruno obviously is very good at creating chances, and we've seen that over the last couple of years. Fred, obviously, it's Fred, a bit like, a bit erratic at times, but I don't think either of them are great at keeping possession in the way that Casemiro and Eriksen do it. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a struggle, and that's where you need your Martinez, Varane, Maguire, whoever it is that is then playing behind them to help out with that. So I think it's going to be a struggle. I mean, I've been saying since, the start of January that we will drop points at some point because it was inevitable. We were always going to start dropping points because the sheer amount of games if we're going to fight on all fronts. But I really cannot pick a 3 that I think would work. I mean, it depends on the game as well. I mean, who have we got after the international break? Is it Newcastle away? That's our first game back, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
So, not going to get...
I think they're not like the hardest fixtures on paper to look at, but in terms of its Premier League football, they're not easy games. They're like, I think you would look at it on paper and unrealistically people would say, oh, we should win that. But Newcastle away is not a should-win game.
That's going to be a tough game, that is.
Yeah, and when you're missing as well, the issue is just quality on the ball and retaining possession. It's just not there. It's even with Casemiro lately, I think his passing stats have been about 60%. It's just the control's just not there. I find it crazy. Obviously, Dan comes on the channel, and I like Dan. But I do find it crazy that he hates Eriksen, does not rate him at all. And he was like, he tweeted something the other day saying that he thinks we've been better without him. And I just, a pure contrast to that. Since Eriksen's been injured, you can see the difference that we haven't got as much control of a game as if him and Casemiro was playing, we would have much more of the ball. It's so glaringly obvious where the issues are at the minute. And it's just that one player that can take 2 seconds longer than everybody else to pick a pass. Just scan the pitch. My fingers crossed. Maybe we could get Scholes out of retirement for 2 months.
I was going to say, we're obviously in that.
It'd be absolutely perfect. But it's crazy to think that we spent all this money under previous managers, not just Ten Hag. We're in a situation where we barely put in a 3 in midfield together because there's that many injuries. What I like, and it's a sort of a side note, I've not heard Ten Hag moan about it once. He's just got on with it.
He's very, I think, I can't remember which pundits were that was saying it, that said that he never mentions the fixtures, he never mentions any of that in press conferences because he's very much on with it, doesn't he?
He's only just started to break a little bit on the refs, to be fair, in the last few weeks. But even before the last few weeks, he was sort of, we just have to play past it. It doesn't matter. We've got to do our own thing. So I'm just hoping it translate onto the pitch. But it is going to be really interesting to see. It's even more so interesting with the Betis game because obviously we're 4-1 up. So is he going to think that he can make more changes or try something different because he's got a bit of an advantage? Or like the Ten Hag we've seen all season, is he just going to name his strongest possible lineup, win the game, and then do exactly the same for the weekend against Fulham?
I think just a quick, I've left this comment on screen. Does anyone want to answer that? Considering it was something you were talking about earlier with bringing Martinez potentially into the midfield. Another defender that has done that is Lindelof, and he's put there, considering Martinez and Varane have such a good partnership together, perhaps Lindelof in the 6, considering he has also played in that position? Is that potentially a route if we're bringing one of the defenders forward?
I would just say no to that because I think Varane needs a break. So you're going to have to change that right centre back. I think Martinez is probably better on the ball as well than Lindelof in terms of just sitting and holding. So yeah, I would save Lindelof. You either bring in Maguire or Lindelof, and maybe Shaw back into left centre back. But no, I see the point. I just think from what I've seen, Varane might need a bit of a break.
Yeah,
I wouldn't play Lindelof as a 6. I get it, and I know he has played there. He's played right back, and for Sweden, he's played centre mid for Sweden, but not for me. I can see the point. I get it. I can see the move. It's a sensible move, but I think Martinez is a better all-round player. Martinez can pick a pass as well from deep. He's got a brilliantly cultured left foot. So I think for me, if you're going to do that, it's got to be Martinez.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well, to be fair. I mean, Joe, I was littered with them when I used to play football as a teen. I used to have that all the time and rush back and then make it worse and then was out for longer. So I know all about that. But it depends how bad it was. None of us really know how bad Sabitzer's injury has been. So he might be back.
You get your telltale 2 lumps, don't you? You're feeling, bollocks, 2 lumps, that's it. That's a
But I think I said to these guys before we went live, if I'm Ten Hag, I'm telling every single player, do not go on international duty and just stay and have a rest for 10 days or so. Because like I said, Newcastle away, 3 days later, we got another game, and then 3 days later, another one, and 3 days later. And as we were just discussing, we get through in the Europa League. There's another 2 in there as well, plus another FA Cup game should we get there as well. It's not worth it for awful friendlies as well. What's Man U winner saying they prefer Sabitzer to Eriksen? We'll gladly have both of them. They're both good options. I think I'm not going to say they're similar. Well, they kind of are. They kind of do a similar role in that sense. But we've not seen as much as Sabitzer as we'd like, I think is the problem for that point of view. I'm assuming that's supposed to say love, not live. But would love if Ten Hag chucked it down Egbalion. The kid is quality. I think, yes. Whether you want to throw him straight into a starting 11 is a little bit different to easing him in. But we've seen it before in the past, so it's an option. Like we're running out of options. We don't have that many senior players left in our starting 11. And that kind of leads us on. We were talking about Pellistri a little bit earlier, and obviously Sancho was mentioned. Leads us on to another injured player that we've got. Garnacho put his little statement out on his Instagram earlier. It's looking like that's at least going to be 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks, another injury added to the list. And I mean, what kind of attacking options, or what do you think our best attacking options is now? This kind of ties, the reason why I'm tying this all together is because that kind of ties into the midfield. Because if you're dropping Pellistri back into 10 or Sancho's dropping back in, that takes away from your wingers, because then you've got 2 less wingers there or 1 less winger. So what are we going to do with that? Now Garnacho is out. What do you think? Obviously, Rashford's a shoe-in for most games. Weghorst obviously probably starts, and Anthony probably starts, but are we going to have to look to change things around now with the midfield dynamic changing, and now Garnacho's out as well?
I think we could bring in Elanga tomorrow, Thursday night. To be honest, I think we could bring in Elanga. He's pacey. I know he's not. He'll probably go in the summer. He's not done enough, has he, to be a regular starter for the club. But I think we could bring him in. He's a hard worker. He'll attack the diagonal quite well. He'll utilise the space that Weghorst creates. If Weghorst plays on Thursday, he'll use that quite well. He can hold up the ball, and he's quite quick and he's quite direct, and he will help Malacia if he plays out on the left. So I think you could possibly bring in Elanga, possibly start Sancho, and maybe rest Rashford and Anthony. Just give them a bit of a rest. Look, I'll be honest with you. The team I play Thursday is the team I'll play Saturday. Sorry, Sunday. Or is it Monday?
Sunday afternoon, 4:30.
So the team I play Thursday is the team I will play Sunday. And then that would be it. There's your cut-off point. Off you go on your hollybobs for 7 days or 5 days. Get yourselves abroad. Get yourselves some sun. Get yourselves off to Dubai. Get yourselves somewhere. Then come back. Then we've got another 7 days. 10 days maybe to, wait for Newcastle. So, look, I know people are saying Langer isn't good enough. He's a player. He plays for Manchester United. You've got to play him. People weren't overly interested in Garnacho at one point. He was not particularly good. So it's one of those. But you've got to start using the squad. And I think Connor's right. And I think if you don't use the likes of Langer, you don't use the likes of Sancho, then they're just going to be stale. And, if you do have a Rashford injury, you do have an Antony injury, they're going to come in not playing. So you've got to play these players. And these are the two games where you start resting the players that have been playing for the last 20-odd matches, 3 days, every 3 days, and you play these fringe players. If they're good enough to sign for Man United, they're good enough to be in the Man United squad, they're good enough to play for the club. Whether you like them or not as players, you've got to understand that, they're pulling on the shirt. None of us are pulling on the shirt. We like it, but we're not good enough. And that's how you've got to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, for yourself, Man U winners there are saying no way Langer played Pellistri, but as we were just discussing, if we're in our hypothetical team, if we're maybe putting Pellistri a little bit further back, that's the attacking option. Well, I know a 10 is attacking anyway, but you know what I mean? That takes away from the winging option. But we are going to have to rotate and rest, as Stu was saying. Otherwise, players, when they come in, are just not going to be ready, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm genuinely interested to see how Ten Hag approaches it. I honestly would not be shocked if we played the strongest team possible.
No, I wouldn't be either.
And then he makes maybe 5 changes once we get towards.
Well, sorry to interrupt. If you're saying you're expecting him to play our strongest, what is that now? Casemiro's out, Sabitzer potentially out.
I genuinely think he'll fall back to McFred, and there'll be an element of playing on the counter attack against Betis. We 4-1 up, they've got to come on to us, so we can dictate the counter attack as much as we want, which is what this team is really good at. It's good at the ball over the top, getting inside. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I've not give up on Langer in the sense that a lot of people gave up on Ahmad and he's gone to Sunderland and he's absolutely smashing it. Langer could do exactly the same. If you give him a chance at a different club, you don't know what the future's got for him. It's not all doom and gloom in the sense people don't seem to think we've got much of a squad with the players for some reason, because if they're not banging form, they're just not good enough, which is strange. Elanga could come on, score the winner against Fulham at the weekend, and suddenly, for the entire month, people are going to be talking differently about him. And you just need that one moment. So I'll be interested to see what he does. I think he'll go strong. Because the international break's coming up, I think he'll go strong. Probably no major shocks with the Betis lineup. Same with Fulham. And then if he can afford to make the substitutions later on, he'll do that. But I hope he rotates. I just don't think he's done it enough this season for me to think that he's going to. But I questioned a few weeks back, actually, after the Liverpool game, the 4-1 to Betis, he put out the same team. And I thought that they needed to win 4-0 because they had something to prove. And if they didn't prove it, your Maguires are going to be sat there going, hold up, we've just been stuffed 7-0 by Liverpool, and I still can't get in this team what is going on. And if you don't start to rotate soon, some of the players will be thinking there's literally no point, and then they're not going to be up for the rest of the season. So you've got to make sure you're swapping it and giving everybody a fair crack of the whip, if that makes sense. I expect, I would say, no more than 3 changes to what we've seen recently, and they'll all be pretty much enforced.
Yeah, I think just to answer that question, I don't know. I think he's back in the
training. He's been training all week, but I would be shocked if he's playing. Maybe the bench against Fulham would be my guess.
I genuinely forgot we had him for a second, because he's out so often. He's just with some of the other players, they come in and he's just seems. I don't remember him playing for us this season. I genuinely can't think.
You know what? I think when he's played, he's scored or got an assist. It's just that rare. His stats look fantastic, but he's just not played that often. One of my friends has just sent me a picture, so he must be watching. And I don't know whether you can remember, Alex Ferguson had to play 4 midfielders in defence, and we won that game. So it's not all doom and gloom. We might do it.
I mean, there's a question from Jarvis with McTominay and Fred. Who would you play in the 6 and the 8 out of the two? I'm assuming that's who he means.
Yeah.
So if you're playing both of them, who's the deeper one?
You'd play McTominay as the 8. As the 6, sorry.
Neither of them can play the 6, but you would
can't.
play McTominay, yeah.
Yeah. And John's in there with Fred is more of an 8.
Yes.
Brown has completely disagreed and said Fred in the 6.
Well, it's that's the beauty of football, isn't it? People view it differently, which is the good thing.
I gotta be honest.
Thing with the Fred and McTominay one is you can't argue either way because neither can really play the 6. They're both more suited to the 8, and it's just who brings the most of the 8. I would say Fred on the basis that he's
Fred brings more on the 8.
The press, but I don't know. It's not a good place to be at the minute.
No, it's certainly going to be a headache for Ten Hag, but not the good one that we always talk about. I've got to be honest, Man U winners, you're always really positive in the chat, talking about a title charge and everything else. Alanga must leave the club. I find it offensive. He's a good player. He's not even Championship. He definitely gets into a Championship side. And I think he gets into most Premier League sides as well. Ahmad is somebody to keep an eye on, that's for sure. But with Sunderland playing the way they are, I wouldn't bet against Sunderland trying to get him on a permanent.
But Tony Mowbray's rested Ahmad, hasn't he, for the last couple of games? He's rested.
Yeah, he said that he needs a break. His body's telling him he needs a rest.
Yeah, he's rested him. So these managers know what they've got to do, and it comes back to trust with Ten Hag. He doesn't necessarily trust everyone in the squad, but you've got to, at this time of the season, you've got to start trusting everybody, and you've got to take a leap of faith in football.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting comment, actually. It's not something, it's going off on a little bit of a tangent, but Martial apparently being involved immensely, I don't think he's right. I actually agree with that, because I think when you're coming off so many injuries as he's had, it's got to be playing on his mind now, where he's going into games thinking about thinking that he's going to get injured, because that's his record, especially this season. I was just having a look then. Played 7 or 8. No, played about 10 games in a row, got injured, came back for 1, got injured again, played 28 minutes against Forest, scored, injured again. So it's like he's playing odd games, getting injured, and he's out for ages. So it must play on his mind. It would if you're constantly getting injured like that. And it's not like it's just
he came back for as well, though, wasn't it? So I think he forced himself back for the City game and then got injured after it.
Yeah. I have a real problem with injury-prone players, a massive problem with him, and that is they don't take enough responsibility to stay injury-free. I remember years and years and years ago, Ryan Giggs had massive hamstring injuries, and they determined it was his car. The clutch was too heavy on his vehicle, and so they made him drive an automatic car. You've got to be sensible with what you're doing, and if you're living your lifestyle not quite right, or you're doing something that's affecting your hamstrings or affecting your knees, you're not working the correct muscles in and around your knees or your ankles or whatever, then that's really down to you. You should be, when you get injured as frequently as Martial does, he should be constantly knocking on the doc's door saying, right, just feel me over before I go out and training. What can you feel? What can I do to strengthen this part of my body? What, how can I do it? Speak to your sports nutritionists, your sports scientists. Take ownership. Take fucking ownership. Don't ever go out in that field thinking, oh crikey, what if I overstretch here, I'm going to get fucking injured again. It's your own fucking fault. Eat the right foods. Do something. It's up to you as a professional athlete to look after your body. Now, I know it's not that easy, by the way, and some people are injury prone. Well, if you're that injury prone, retire. Just retire and go and do something else, because you're no good to the squad. Paul Pogba's the same. He only played twice for Juve, hasn't he, or something?
Yeah, he's injured again.
Injured again. Some players actually quite like to be injured. Look at Phil Jones. He's absolutely stolen a living out of us, and because he's constantly injured, absolutely constantly injured. So anyway, it's just my opinion. That is, I'm not saying I'm right, but it's just my opinion. You do what you can, don't you, to stay injury free.
It's a sad state of affairs with Martial, because I've just looked at it. I can't believe he's 27. Like, that makes me feel old. I remember him coming to United. I mean, what was he when he came to United? 19.
19, yeah.
That's just. See, that's the thing. I'm still in that phase where I still think he's a good young prospect. We're getting to the point now where this should be his prime. He's coming up to his prime
literally
years
the peak
now.
of his career. Yeah, the interesting one, Martial, is I agree with Stu in a sense of the injury. I think that's the thing about the City game. He's tried to prove that he can play through the pain, and it's backfired massively. He probably should have sat out that game, and he'd be in better nick than he is now.
Got to use your brain, haven't you? As a footballer, you got to use your brain. So
that's what I mean. It's got to be sensible with it. That's why I'd rather him take longer and come back, actually. But I think he's one injury away from United potentially just going, right, that's it now. Because, like I said, to miss a full season, obviously that's coming off United's weight. Obviously, he's getting a wage, obviously, for that. It's all medical things covered and everything else.
Yeah,
I think a lot.
I mentioned it on the last stream. Weghorst has played 15 or 16 games since he came, which is more than Martial in the last 2 seasons in terms of starts. And it's a mad stat, but I'd imagine United, if you said to Ten Hag, we'll take Val on permanent and we'll sell Martial, he'd do it because it's the consistency and he knows he's going to be able to pick him every week.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. 100%. What's Apex here? Martial appearance-wise looks shocking when he came to United. He was fit and healthy. Potentially, like I said, we don't know. I really hope he comes back and is a fit, because I loved watching Martial, and I still do. When he's fully fit and firing, he's one of my favourite players to watch in this team. But it's the consistency of it. And like I said, right now, we need him more than ever.
He's so good at bringing everyone else into play as well. His ability to drop deep and get on the ball as a striker is something that we miss massively. Martial in full flow with Rashford in the form he's in, it'd be like Solskjaer would never left.
That COVID season with a player that we won't mention, but that front three with Martial, Rashford, and the other guy was some of the best football I've seen United play in a long, long time, with Bruno in behind, and that was incredible. If we can get that Martial back, Rashford on the left, and whoever it is on the right, whether it be Anthony or whoever, Fernandes behind, and Eriksen and Casemiro, that is a solid side. But as you know, Casemiro's always suspended, Eriksen's injured, Martial's always out as well, and Anthony, obviously, I don't know whether you can fully rely on him either. So it's a tough one. Ten Hag's certainly going to be earning his money over the next few weeks. Not that he already hasn't done that. He certainly has, but he's certainly going to have to make a few big calls, especially for these next 2 games. That's for sure. What's discount? Is that a discount? I don't know who that's. I think that's you.
Me, yeah. The wish Tom Cruise. I like it. It's the nicest thing anyone's ever said.
Discount Tom Cruise. Good to see you too, Brand Night, mate. Good to
see you back in the comments, that's for sure. Make sure you obviously tune in for the next one. I think it's Friday. My next one. I'll come to that in a second. We'll look to wrap this one up then. Before we do, because obviously we're not going to do a preview for the Betis game. This is kind of it. We've kind of spoken a lot about the rotation as Dan said. We're 4-1 up going into this one. Stu, what do you reckon, or how do you think the game's going to go, and what's your score prediction for it as well?
I think we'll probably be on the wrong end on Thursday, to be fair. Probably 1-0, maybe 2-1. But I think we'll be on the wrong end, but it won't matter. It won't matter. We'll go through. I'll be actually. I do think we'll be on the wrong end. I think we'll probably get beat. But I will say this: I'm not sure Betis will count this as a game of interest. I think he might look at it and think, well, there's no way we're going to beat Manchester United 4-0. It just isn't going to happen, even though they're not playing particularly well. And I'm wondering whether he might see this as a dead rubber himself. So we're interested to see what they put out. But bearing in mind, don't forget their average age is about 29, isn't it, of their first team? Because they've got Joaquin is about 58.
I think he's 41, and Bravo's 39, 40.
Bravo's about 40. Yeah. Their centre half was about 38, wasn't he? Their right back was, they've got quite an aging squad, and I don't think it's essential to them 4-1. I think sometimes as a manager, you've got to be relatively pragmatic about what you want from the season. And I haven't looked to see where Betis. Yeah, that's a fair result. I think we'll be on the wrong end of a result. To be honest, I don't think we'll win. if we do, I think we'll win by the odd goal, but I think we'll probably lose by the odd goal. To be fair.
It's an interesting point you make from from a Betis book, because they're only 3 points off the top of the Champions League spots in the Liga, so they've obviously got that to fight for, which obviously is
that would be more important. If I'm Pellegrini at 4-1 down, I wouldn't even. Yeah, that would be more important to make sure we qualify for Champions League. I knew they're having a good season. He's a good manager, Pellegrini. He's like 70 himself, isn't he? It's a great squad, but good old Joaquin still playing. Crikey, amazing.
I mean, Dan, for yourself, what do you reckon for Thursday?
I would take a 0-0 as long as there was no red cards, no injuries. It was just one of them absolute bore fests that are going to waste 2 hours of my life. That's exact. I want to literally sit in front of the telly and fall asleep watching it. It's that boring. But when I wake up, it's 0-0 and it's someone walks off fine. It's one of them. I think it might be Betis might genuinely change a few things and tell a few of their fringe players to go and win a place. But I'll take 0-0 now. Fine.
If I'm Pellegrini, and I didn't realise they were, I knew they were having a good season, but if they're 3 points off Champions League, then I've written it off. Seriously, I know it's bad, but I've just written it off.
Well, with the same, it's Ten Hag, won't he? He's not going to want to pick up any big injuries to players that he's only just getting back as well.
Not if he can get the Champions League. The money.
I'm going to go for, I reckon, probably the wrong end, maybe a 1-0.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was leaning towards, like a 1-0 or a 2. They're probably going into it with the mindset, win the game, lose the tie kind of attitude. As you know, to be fair, I was like that when we were going into the PSG game those years ago in Durali. I was like, let's just win the game. You know, if we get knocked out, we get knocked out. And then obviously that famous night happened. But yeah, I think 1-0, 1-1, something like that, because I just don't think our minds are going to be on it.
It's not going to be a busy game, I don't think. I think it'll be
no, I don't think so.
A pedestrian game.
Yep, that's exactly what we want. Just an absolute bore fest. Save the big game for Fulham. If we can beat Fulham and get to the next round of the FA Cup. But I just don't want anything to happen on Thursday. Absolutely nothing.
Well, I hope something happens so Barry's got something to talk about on Friday's show.
Yeah.
Because otherwise that's going to be a pretty much...
we can do a season review instead.
Well, I'm joining Barry Friday, I think.
I think you are.
I think I'm back Friday, yeah.
Just a quick question from Jarvis, because this has been more of a fans forum type show. We are going to start doing more of these as the games slow down at some point when we've actually got gaps to do these. Just very quickly on this one, who do we get to replace Martial? I mean, there's no talk of him going yet, but talking striker talk. Kane and Osimhen are the two that are mentioned. I mean, is there any early shouts from you guys as to who you would want? Or
there's only one. Vlahovic. He'd be dynamite for us.
Oh, from
Juve. We should have had him from Fiorentina when we had the chance, and I think we'll get him cheap as well. I think he'll be on the market cheap. Vlahovic. I think Kane's great, but you're on the wrong end of 29, 30 when he comes. But he's terrific. I mean, Kane guarantees us, I think, 30 goals. I really do. I like Osimhen as well. I think he's brilliant, but I think Vlahovic is our better. What's Vlahovic? Is he 23? Is he 23? I know Osimhen's young as well, isn't he?
He is. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Vlahovic. I do. I think he'd be great for us, Vlahovic, personally. But
I don't think there's many options, to be honest, out there. I think the three you've named are pretty much all the options in terms of a top quality forward. There's obviously like Sesko and players like that are a bit younger. I think it'll all depend on the owners. Obviously, it's a completely different show, but depending who we bring in or who comes in will depend on who we get. I think Harry Kane's a no-brainer in terms of
he is a no-brainer,
goals, etc. But 100 million plus.
Levy will just make that negotiation absolutely impossible.
Yeah, I don't know whether it'd be worth wasting that time with. So I would say the guy from Juve as well, to be fair.
He's brilliant. I think Vlahovic is ace. But Connor, when did I've spoken about Vlahovic before, haven't I?
Yeah. You like your players that end in itch, don't you? Because you were raving about Brozovic as well a few years ago, I remember, on this channel.
And would Brozovic not have fitted in perfectly for us? You know, these are
I'll take him right now.
Yeah, we can do with him now. Yeah,
great players. Bro, I know the types of players I like. You see, and I just think Vlahovic, I think he'd be absolutely great. Do you know? People were talking short-term stuff. If you needed a striker for 6 months, maybe 18 months, Mitrovic would do well for us as well. He knows where the back of the net is. People don't like him because he's not a fancy name. Same with Ivan Toney, and he's not a name.
I would take Toney tomorrow. It's just a betting thing. You just don't know what's going on.
Mitrovic, look at Mitrovic. Look what he's done at Fulham. It's phenomenal. Absolutely.
I just saw what Jarvis has put there about the plenty of strikers knocking around. What I mean is scorers. So like Jonathan David, for example, and that Balogun from Arsenal that's on is it in France. They're not proven to what we need to take us to the next level. We need something that's properly proven. Kane.
I was going to say, do you know? I hope this doesn't come across as insulting to you, Jarvis, but those names that are mentioned on there seem very FIFA-esque signings to me. Players that people would sign on FIFA because they're young and they've got the potential to get to a 95 rating or something like that. Yeah,
it's like Sesko. Sesko's 100% got the ability to be world-class, as probably every name on that sheet there, but they're not what we need now. We need something that we can really hit straight away.
Patrick Schick's
good, yeah.
And Diaz out of where is he? Baron Diaz. Where's he from? What's he called?
AC Milan.
Is it Milan? Is he?
The one that was at Madrid went on loan.
I'm just trying to think now. Anyway, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone, which is unlike me. But Schick's a good shout. Actually, Sesko would be a great shout for us. We brought him in as a Julian Alvarez type player. The way they use Alvarez at City, he's eventually going to be their main man. He's a good player, and I think Sesko fits his mold quite nicely. But we need a Kane or an Osimhen or
I think Jarvis is spot on with them two names in particular.
He is, absolutely. But Vlahovic for me.
I would love Kane, but I think that's going to be very expensive for the age he is. Osimhen, anyone who's dealt with Napoli will know how difficult they are to try and get players off, as Chelsea have found out in recent years. Trying to get players off that Napoli president does not like selling players for cheap, so Osimhen's going to cost you an absolute fortune.
He's 120 and he's north of 120. And you're right about Kane. Kane will be a nightmare. I don't know why you'd want to bother going to Levy, to be honest. He's an idiot.
Well, they're saying 120 million, aren't they? And that seems mad to me. Well, it does in terms of the situation. If he had 5 years left on his deal and he was 28, it's not mad, but just the situation.
I see where you're coming from, Jarvis, in terms of young. But do you know what? I would love a player like what we had with Cavani. Not going to lie, because that's the last proper strike. I love Weghorst just as as a person anyway, but I think Cavani was the last proper striker I can remember. I know Lukaku had the goals, but really, Cavani was the one. I think we need a striker like this that's proven that's going to score. We had that with. And you're going to get that with a Kane or an Osimhen. I think some of those other players have the potential to get it, like a Martial type signing. But as we've seen with Martial, you don't know how that could end up further down the line.
We need Rude. We need Rude back.
Just bring all the ex-legends out of retirement.
Crikey, what a finisher he was! What a finisher! He was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Rude.
Yeah, some of the best goals I've ever seen live. Ruud van Nistelrooy. So
tremendous. He was great. He was great. I'm not a striker, but you can appreciate him, his finesse and his ability to be there at the right time. Brilliant.
Can always remember that he would get criticised because he scored all his goals in the box, but the amount of times he'd hit a 25-yarder and hit the crossbar, or a defender would get it off the line, or he had it in his locker, it just never seemed to come off.
The funny thing about that is, Dan, is a proper nine
scores in the box. Yeah,
that's his home. That's where he lives. Not bothered about. I don't care about 20 yards. I'm not interested. Get stuffed. Get me that fucking ball in the box, and I'm there. Rude. If he never scored, nobody would speak to him because he'd be chucking his boots all over the place. He'd be going absolutely mad.
People say that. Do they not remember his goal against Fulham? That started inside our own half.
Started with an elbow, proper strike.
With a centre back, a black eye, yeah.
And then off he went. Off he went on that run.
It was the finish. It was so surprising to the goalkeeper because it looked like he was going to take another touch, and then he just whack.
I think it's surprising to Van Nistelrooy as well. His face,
it was mad.
Was mad, but crikey, he was brilliant.
Wow, I've just seen the Man City score. Wow,
they're about 3-up,
5-0.
They're 5-0 up already.
Haaland 4 goals.
Haaland scored 4.
Fucking hell.
Well, that's the kind of striker we need, but that ain't
I imagine he would have done bit.
They've rolled over and had their belly tickled, have they?
That's pretty incredible. But there we are. But yeah, whoever we get in this summer, Dan is 100% right, and something we will cover on the channel as the story develops. It really depends on which ownership comes in, because whichever ownership comes in, if we get a new one, are going to want to make some kind of statement signing, and each will have their own version of what that looks like for when that happens. But as for now, there's a lot of reports around United at the moment. A lot of people throw in mud at the wall, seeing what sticks. I don't think people truly know.
Nobody knows,
what's going on.
Nobody knows.
So we'll wait and see.
There'll be some secret bidders in there as well that nobody knows. It's just one of those things. It'll come out in the wash. It's got to be done by the end of April, hasn't it? Well, the owners have got to be in place, but they've got to be agreed. The deal's got to be agreed, hasn't it, by the end of April?
There's some kind of deadline, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's not too far away then.
Something we for sure keep an eye on. Lots coming up, lots of games after the international break, especially if we win on Thursday night as well. Right, we shall wrap it up there. Thanks, Stu, and to Dan for joining me tonight. It's been a good show and a good little discussion around the midfield and all other things as well. Like I said, we'll be back on Friday, which will be kind of the usual Friday show where it's half match reaction, half preview ahead of Fulham. Obviously, next week we'll have some more different types of shows because obviously it's international break, so we'll do some other things on there. Maybe some more stuff like this where it's a bit more of a Q&A type show rather than talking about individual games. We just have a little bit of a chat because why not? We are looking to do some other things on Twitter as well. Twitter Spaces, if you've followed our last one, they might return in the next few weeks. So make sure you're following the Twitter account for that. If you don't want to give your views on screen, on camera, you can do that obviously via Twitter as well. We're going to open up that avenue for people again. Obviously, the WFC channel didn't go great at the weekend for the women's team either, on the wrongful end of 2 denied penalties. So we lost that game to top of the league, Chelsea now. So the race for Champions League is well and truly on, with 3 teams potentially level on points now. And somebody is missing out. Let's hope it's not United. So make sure you check out All For United WFC for all of that. Liking the video and subscribing, all the rest of it. And we shall see you guys in the next one.